Hi, this is James Gianninoto again with part 3. And so far we've talked about minerals and we've talked about plants. But now let's talk about animals. So you have all kinds of animals. You have things that you don't even think of as animals. Spiders and insects are animals. You have sea creatures are animals. And you have all kinds of flying animals. You have all kinds of animals on the land. So what's going on with them? Well, these are more advanced souls than plants or minerals, and they're going through a process of learning all kinds of things. And just because you become an animal doesn't mean that you know everything yet or that you're capable of all things. In fact, an animal might for the first time be learning about motherhood, being a mother, having children and looking after them. These are very important concepts before you can go much further along. So you have to start somewhere. So animals really have different stages of consciousness according to what they can do. Now, as you can tell, something that's really simple that lives in a hive, sort of, so to speak, like an anthill, one ant in an anthill, compared to an ape, there's a huge difference there. So this is the level of expression has increased because the soul has become more capable. So as each soul dies from its body and wants to take its next step, sometimes it didn't learn very much as a porcupine, so it's going to be a porcupine again. And sometimes it may have done something as a porcupine that requires that in its next lifetime it be a fish, or in its next lifetime it be a duck. But generally speaking, animals try to increase their ability. So they may spend a lot of lifetimes as some sort of a wild animal, and then after they finally learn whatever there is to learn with that species in that way, whatever they're doing, then it can take its next step. And when it takes its next step, it takes an animal form that's more expressive. So first of all, it's conscious that it exists. Second of all, it has feelings, but now it has thoughts. Well, you can imagine that some of the animals don't have a lot of thoughts, but the really advanced animals have a lot of thoughts, a real lot of thoughts. So in this progression, you go from being just a simple animal all the way up to being an animal that is ready for learning spiritual choices. So there's a line in there between the lowest form of animal and the most basic, all the way up to the highest, where you draw this line and you get pets. And pets are animals who interact with human beings. And why? Why is that important? Well, there's only so many things you can learn as an animal, no matter what animal you are. But when you interact with humans as a pet, and I say pet because that's where they're probably in the same house with you. It might be a cat or a dog, it might be a horse, it might be a bird, it might be whatever. But the point is, in that interaction, it gets to see a lot more than it ever thought of. So this is like a door opening to a whole new world once they get interaction. So animals start out at a really basic level, and the thing is they are thinking. So, the normal thing is, well, we have a nest of ants. We don't want the nest of ants. We're going to get pesticide. We're going to kill them. Well, that's exactly the wrong thing. That's one of the things that's so wrong with life all around us is, they aren't important. We'll just do that. But they do have a role to play. Can you imagine what the earth would be like if there weren't animals digesting all the waste? I mean, we would be knee-deep in waste just from our own yard. And the thing is that all these little animals, these little things that are out there, whether they're bacteria, which are really small, or amoebas, or any other kind of thing, they're digesting, they're processing the world around you. So they're breaking it down into its constituent elements, and they're making it available to be reused. So even if you could design a world and you said, well, I would just never have any bacteria, I just wouldn't, that would be very wrong, because you'd probably drown in your own waste if you didn't have bacteria. So the thing is everything has to be in balance with everything else. But in a good world where everything is going along as it should be, you're going to have all these things because you're creating waste. Something is going to break it down and make it ready to be recycled. I mean, that's the beauty of the complexity of life on Earth, is seeing all of this going on around you. So the thing is that there are all these different souls are trying to grow. So why should you mistreat them? You shouldn't. You should actually thank the birds, the animals, everything for being in your life. And if they're in the wrong place, like if you have ants in your house and you don't want ants in your house, why don't you try going to have a talk with them and say, look, I realize what you're doing, but it really upsets me to find ants in my kitchen, and I will kill you if I have to, because I do have to survive, and I can't have ants in my house. But rather than kill you, why don't you just move? How about if I give you 2 weeks for you to move? So my mother, for instance, she had a problem with yellow jackets, had a nest near her car, and she goes, I've got to go buy a lot of pesticide, and I'm going to spray all those hornets. I said, they're not hornets, they're yellow jackets. And I said, instead of doing that, why don't you ask them to move? She goes, well, how will they know? I said, oh, believe me, they'll know. Because you go out and have a talk with them. So she went out and had a talk with them, and within a couple of days, the whole nest had moved. She didn't have to buy a single bit of chemical. So she was like amazed. So she was at lunch, and there was some world-famous expert on water from Switzerland, and the woman said, oh, I had a terrible mouse problem, and finally I had to call this exterminator because I didn't want to kill it, but I just felt I had to get rid of the mice in my house. But the night before I called before the exterminator was going to come, I wrote a note, and I put it in the mouse hole in the wall, and it said, Dear Mousy, I've called an exterminator to kill you tomorrow, and if you don't move tonight, you're probably going to be dead tomorrow, and I just thought I'd let you know that if you move now, you'll be safe. And she stuffed it in the mouse hole, and the next day when the exterminator came, he couldn't find a single mouse, and she's never had another mouse in the house. So my mother jumped up from the table, going, that's what my son told me to do with the yellow jackets. I can't believe you're saying that. I can't believe that somebody else thinks this way. And that's what I'm trying to tell you is you've got to examine how you've reacted to all the things around you. You've got to say to yourself, is this really the best way to handle it? Now, all of us have beliefs that have been formed from behaviors a long time. It's like every time you believe something or you told something and you believe it, you form this little program in your brain. So when the situation comes up, you just push the button again and again and again. But is that really the best solution? That's what I'm trying to tell you, is you should really be examining your life and saying, wow, what beliefs have I formed since childhood that now need to be changed? You should be sitting down and saying, what beliefs are really limiting me now? I want to grow as a whole person, and what do I believe about minerals, plants, and animals that's really holding me back from being in open communication with the rest of the universe and growing and being a positive influence wherever I go? And that's what happens is even as a child, you have certain behaviors that get learned. And you put them away. They're programmed. They all have their little buttons, and the buttons are just waiting to be pushed. But someday when you have the time, you should be sitting down and saying, wow, all of those buttons are attachments. You're attached to reacting in a certain way to certain things. So you might want to go through all your belief patterns right from day one, right up to now, and say, I'm going to update everything. And some of these patterns that I have and some of these beliefs that I have, I'm going to get rid of because I'm going to be a more complete person. I'm going to grow as a soul. I'm going to be really constructive part of life on Earth, and I'm going to be able to appreciate everything around me at a level that I didn't even know that I could appreciate before. So this is what you're going to be doing with yourself. Now, once an animal learns all that it can learn as being an animal, it's earned the right to be born as something that will be in touch with humans, as a pet. And what happens there? This soul is learning what's important with humans. And why? Because someday it's going to be a human. Now, some animals are actually humans that didn't learn their lesson. So don't think that just because that you go from being an animal to a human that you can't go back from being a human to an animal. Because if you treated people like dogs your whole life, let's say every lifetime, whenever you can, you mistreat other people, you step on them, you treat them like they're not important, and you fail to appreciate their eternal soul, what would be the perfect karma for you to learn your lesson? Well, it might be to be born as a dog. And let's say you've killed a lot of people. And you say, well, I'm really sorry, but I don't know how I'm going to learn not to do that. Well, guess what? Your soul might be choose to be born as a great white shark. And your whole goal in that lifetime would be to not eat anybody. Well, imagine that. So people say that animals that have random spotting color on them are really animal souls, but animals that have mirror images on both sides, in other words, for some reason the coloration on one side is the exact copy of the coloration on the other side, a lot of those are humans trying to learn and trying to get it right, what they didn't get right the first time. So you probably have met an animal which you thought, wow, this animal's like just so far beyond an animal that I really think it's human. And why would you say that? Because, you see, as a human, you're not only conscious that you exist and you have feelings and you have thoughts, but now you have the spiritual choice, which the minerals, the plants, and the animals really can't experience the way you do, but some animals can. And that is that you can orient all your behavior around being selfish or being unselfish. So have you ever seen a dog? You come home and the dog has chewed up the couch. You look at the dog looks at you and goes, uh-oh, uh-oh. And you look at the dog's face and you realize the dog is guilty. These are the first opportunities for this animal to learn about spiritual choices. And you see, the same thing happens with humans. You don't know what's right or wrong, but then you find out. Now you're thinking, oh boy, I shouldn't do that again. And then if you do it again, you feel guilty. And then you're like, oh geez. And then, of course, if you're selfish, you're thinking, well, nobody will find out. I can get away with it. Maybe I can just continue being selfish. I just have to make sure that I'm not caught. And of course, that's not good. That's the wrong way of approaching life, and that's a dead end. It's like if there's a fork in the road, you just took the wrong fork. But the right path is to say, wow, I realize I made a mistake, and I don't want to make that mistake again. In fact, now I'm going to review all the areas of my life, and I'm going to try and become a better person every single day. I'm going to try and think of other people first, because now I realize that my welfare is connected to their welfare. And so if they're not doing well, I'm not doing well. So if I'm doing well, they're doing better. So in a sense, that's what you're learning. That's what you've got to learn. And so animals do that too. So the most advanced animals, their next lifetime, they could very well incarnate as a human being. That doesn't mean that they're going to reincarnate as a human again, because their souls have to be sparked. But the thing is if they just live as a human like a vegetable on a couch, and that's all they do, no, they're not going to be taking it any further. But if they have an interest in life and they begin to take action and make a contribution to life itself, then their souls will be sparked. Well, the same is true with these animals, you see. The animal, like I have a cat that just loves to tear up rolls of toilet paper. And I haven't punished him because, he doesn't know anything. He just thinks, I don't know what he thinks. Maybe he thinks, I thought you were never ever going to come home, so I ripped up your toilet paper for you. I don't know what he thinks. But the thing is that you'll notice with your pets the beginning of this spiritual awareness. So what I'm really saying with this series is that everything is continuous growth. You've got to start somewhere, and where you're going is as a spiritual being without a body. Hello? So isn't that interesting? Now, I hope there's some more in this series, but I hope the first 3 got you going. Thank you very much. Bye.